Poetics of Space by Gaston Bachelard. Introduction. A philosopher who has involved his entire thinking from the fundamental themes of philosophy of science and followed the main line of the active, growing rationalism of contemporary science as closely as he could, must forget his learning and break with all habits of philosophical research, if he wants to study the problems posed by the poetic imagination. For here the cultural past doesn't count. The long day-in, day-out effort of putting together constructive thoughts is ineffectual. One must be receptive to the image at the moment it appears. If there be a philosophy of poetry, it must appear and reappear through significant verse, in total adherence to an isolated image. To be exact, in the very ecstasy of the newness of the image. The poetic image is a sudden salience on the surface of the psyche, the lesser psychological causes which have not been sufficiently investigated. Nor can anything general and co-coordinated serve as a basis for a philosophy of poetry. The idea of this simple or bias in case would be disastrous, for it would interfere with the essential psychic actuality, the essential novelty of the poem. And whereas philosophical reflection applied to scientific thinking elaborated over a long period of time requires any new idea to become integrated in a body of tested ideas, even though this body of ideas subjected to profound change by the new idea, as is the case in all revolutions of contemporary science. The philosophy of poetry must acknowledge that the poetic act has no past, at least no recent past, in which its preparation and appearance could be followed. Later, when I shall have occasion to mention the relation of a new poetic image to an archetype lying dormant in the depths of the unconscious, I shall have to make it understood that this relation is not, properly speaking, a causal one. The poetic image is not subject to an inner thrust. It is an echo of the past. On the contrary, the brilliance of an image, the distant past resounds with echoes, and it is hard to know at what depth these echoes will reverberate and die away. Because of its novelty and its action, the poetic image has an entity and a dynamism of its own. It is referable to a direct ontology. This ontology is what I plan to study. Very often, then, it is an exact opposite of causality, that this in